A lot was riding on Apple's WWDC 2024 event. The rest of the tech industry had shown their hand on what their strategy was for the AI era over the past 1.5 years since the advent of ChatGPT, and pressure had been mounting on Apple to do the same. Apple kept their hand close to the chest. That is until the 10th of June 2024, when Apple unveiled its groundbreaking generative AI feature, Apple Intelligence, to a very positive reception and giving the acronym another meaning that most laymen will probably end up associating it with. However, this launch wasn't just another product release. It was a strategic move to help Apple catch up, quote unquote, with its competitors, and it resulted in Apple stock surging by nearly 10%, almost $500 billion in the following 48 hours, re-establishing it as the world's most valuable company, back alongside the likes of Microsoft. This is just Apple's first move into becoming the dominant force in AI. Welcome to Technosphere, where we delve into the latest technology trends, breaking down complex concepts to information accessible to everyone. First up, how will Apple dominate AI? To those familiar with Apple's meticulous product launches, this was no surprise. Apple only releases something when it's ready to ship, by meeting its high bar for quality and usefulness to the user. Large language models like OpenAI's ChatGPT are useful, but they require learning on how to use effectively. Most try to prompt it like they would a search engine, not realizing that they are building context with it over the course of several prompts. The output becoming more useful the more context it builds. This is where Apple's approach is so genius, as the AI builds in your personal context automatically. Unlike its rivals who rush to scale up their AI offerings, Apple charted a different course, opting against developing another large, cumbersome and expensive model. Apple engineered a leaner, more efficient, small language model capable of operating directly on devices. This means they can make it fully private, and while still providing a highly specialized assistance adapting to your personal needs. And best of all, it's free for users and open to developers to integrate across third-party apps. No longer do they need to rely on OpenAI's paid API for basic AI features. This strategy also works out great for Apple too, as it happens to be safe in terms of reputational risk. Just look at what happened to Google's Gemini when it first launched, as they have outsourced any more generalized assistance to ChatGPT and opened up the platform for other third-party large language models. Apple and their users essentially get to have their cake and eat it too. The announcement of Apple Intelligence raised an intriguing question. Why is Apple praised for using personal data in its AI when similar companies like Microsoft have drawn criticism? The answer lies in trust and track record. Apple has long prioritized user privacy, building a strong bond with its consumer base. In contrast, Microsoft, with its business-oriented focus, often leaves individual users wary of potential overreach. Apple's approach to AI reassures users that their personal data remains private, securing its place as a trusted leader in technology. As we step into the AI era, Apple's strategic innovation not only sets it apart from its competitors, but also reshapes the landscape for personal AI-powered technology. With Apple Intelligence, the future of AI is not only smarter, but also safer and more user-centric thanks to the small on-device language models. But what are small language models, or SLMs? Techniques for training LLMs to be more compact and efficient have already improved dramatically over the past 18 months since ChatGPT brought GenAI to the mainstream. So much so that you can run a GPT-4 quality model locally on your machine without an internet connection. This brings huge benefits as the ones Apple Intelligence brings, like privacy and it being cost-free. Turns out data quality plays a huge part in the quality of output from the model, so going for quality rather than sheer quantity when training one actually yields strong results. The result is that you end up with useful models like Meta's Llama 3 and Microsoft's Phi 3 that are able to compete with LLMs like GPT and Claude on some benchmarks. But how on earth can a generative AI fit on your phone? A common misconception is that one would think all of the model's training data needs to be stored in the model itself, i.e. the corpus used to train GPT-4 of the internet, so that it can reference it when it needs to, but that is not the case. All the model are the model weights. In short, weights are just a bunch of floating point numbers stored in tensors, basically multi-dimensional lists of numbers that can control the type of output you get depending on what those numbers are. These numbers, weights, are determined by the training data only when the model is being trained. Once determined, the training data is no longer needed to be stored. Once trained, it's just tokens in and tokens out like any other system, using statistics to determine what is the most likely token that comes next in a sequence, which are then decoded into the words we see in the response. Frontier SLMs like Phi and Llama have variants as small as 3.8 billion and 8 billion parameters respectively, which compared to an LLM like GPT-4, which is rumoured to have around 1760 billion parameters by contrast, you can already imagine how much more efficient these small models are. What's more, these machine learning models can be compressed, reducing their size even further. Various techniques such as pruning, palletization, and quantization. Quantization, for instance, rounds the model weights up an order of magnitude so they require less bits to store, thus decreasing the storage needed. However, there is a trade-off, as doing this also diminishes the model accuracy. There are some workarounds too though, like using tensor lookup tables to essentially uncompress the models while in use. It is these compression techniques that allow Apple to get their SLM onto an iPhone, and improvements in the on-device tensor lookup table storage for multiple tables for a single tensor. But enough about the technical side of Apple Intelligence. Why is it that Apple can execute on bringing AI to the masses while its competition cannot? Apple has built a strong reputation of trust over the years, like I mentioned earlier, but there is more to it than just trust and its vast user base. Built into the OS of the Mac, iPad and iPhone is a framework called App Intents. App Intents essentially allows apps to expose a piece of functionality, such as join a meeting from Zoom or add a to-do and things. Apple has supported this feature for years, and third-party apps have been adopting intents more and more. This intents framework is the key to allowing a smarter Siri to execute multiple actions on your behalf, such as making it to do and things, to make a presentation for Zoom and create the meeting in Zoom, all from a single command. This is a huge platform advantage that Apple has over its competitors. As they control everything from the software to the hardware, Apple has been able to plan ahead and build the necessary infrastructure to embed its AI seamlessly into the user experience. Like a benevolent big brother, the OS takes all your data and uses it as personal context to give the user highly personal assistance from its on-device SLM that most users would find useful, as it knows all your habits while still keeping your data encrypted and private on-device, and also via its private cloud compute that not even Apple can access. An LLM like ChatGPT, by contrast, is more like a search engine for generalized, non-personal information and assistance. Other, more open platforms like Android could implement something similar, but because the OS has to support so many different kinds of hardware, it will never be as well optimized and have the same level of privacy and security. So it seems like a strong start for Apple's AI strategy, but would they be able to shape it over the coming years? And are there any hurdles that they might need to overcome? Firstly, the most obvious thing that Apple would do is bring it to all their new iPhones, iPads, and Macs from here on out as standard to their iPhone 16 series in a few months' time. Something I was surprised by was that they were not using their private cloud compute, their service for offloading any intensive AI tasks to the cloud, to iPhones that could not run the models locally, i.e. all the iPhones below the iPhone 15 Pro. Despite this, Apple's key goal will be to get Apple Intelligence into as many people's hands as possible. Secondly, I see Apple making a push for more third-party developers to adopt Siri intents into their apps for reasons I talked about in the last chapter. A smarter Siri executing actions on your behalf could potentially cause a bit of controversy among developers, because there will be less reason for users to use their app, leading to the developer losing control over the user experience and diminishing their ability to put their brand in front of the user. This is similar to a time when Apple tried to make their TV app the one-stop shop for online streaming on their platforms. But third parties like Netflix pushed back, as it would draw users away from their app and thus losing control over their own users' experience of their service. This is something that I am sure Apple are aware of and would try to solve. But it'll be interesting to see how developers react as Apple Intelligence gets rolled out over the year. Apple seemed to now have a small language model for great personal assistance. However, I can imagine them diverging from their OpenAI partnership down the road, as Apple don't typically like having to depend on other companies for key features, such as generalized AI assistants built directly into their OS. So I could see Apple training their own large language model that competes with other frontier models like GPT-4 or 5 in the future, Claude and Gemini, and then ditch the third parties for their own general model, similar to what they did with Google Maps when they launched Apple Maps. Apple are known for controlling the entire user experience, from the hardware to the software, to even services more recently. If Apple do end up training their own LLM for more general use cases, I can see them using it for a lot of their cloud services such as music, TV, and the App Store for recommendation engines, improving what those services show you based on your tastes, as this would essentially complete their entry into generative AI space and put pressure on competitors like OpenAI and Google, thanks to the user base they've built, and most users would be used to the new AI features that would have relied on ChatGPT prior to the switchover. So most users would not even realize switching over to Apple's LLM. And most of those users, that number in the hundreds of millions, are not technical, and they do not care about staying up to date with the latest AI features, but will still be using Apple Intelligence features because they own an iPhone and the features are so embedded into the user experience that they don't even realize they are using GenAI. While Apple is in a very strong position to dominate AI with its huge user base, on-device privacy-centric and highly personalized features, it does have a few hurdles in its path to domination, such as the potential friction of getting developer support if it meant they have to sacrifice their brand experience, and then the cost and reputation risk of training their own LLM if they choose to take full control of the OS AI experience, which in all likelihood they would. As an iOS engineer myself, I will be following up Apple's intelligence features closely, watching how it unfolds and what it means for the future of generative AI for the whole industry. I hope you enjoyed this video essay. This will be the first of many. I'm brand new to YouTube, so if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, as this will help the video be served to more people. Be sure to leave a comment too. Let me know what you think. Cheers.